Greetings and salutations, Ranting Engineer back at you. I want to do a shout out to my friend Rob Potter. Sorry, I was supposed to post this video a while ago, but I ended up in Fort McMurray. Got a chance to look at some of the flood damage up there, and it's crazy. Some of the size of the ice on the side of the banks of the river that's remaining easily dwarfed 1-ton trucks. They are huge. Anyways, what is this video is about? So on Facebook, I saw a handful of people, in relation to this gun legislation, people saying, oh, look at that, we have effective leadership, making the correlation that this new gun legislation they put in place is effective, and they're effective leaders by putting it in place. So let's put this legislation to the test. As you know, I have the tendency to do things with stats and math and data, and I try to get to the truth of things. So let's do a little bit of background for people that aren't familiar with it, because my observation is a lot of people on Facebook, their backgrounds are they don't handle guns. I'm not talking about my Fort St. John friends that have moved to the city. I'm talking about the other ones that have started in the city. Most of the time, they have probably never handled a pew-pew, as my friend Kirk likes to call them. They don't know the rigors of obtaining a firearm unless they're grandfathered down. Owning a handgun in Canada, the hoops you got to go through to own one. Now, I don't own one. Quite a number of friends do. I've got friends in law enforcement. I've got friends in military. Anyways, I know that what you have to do to be able to own and to buy and own a handgun in Canada is very, 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 very strict. Okay, so you need to understand first and foremost, it's not like anybody off the street can go get a firearm. So let's go further into the data and just give some background. I had this conversation last year on this subject because we kind of got rumblings of this was coming. So the Liberals have been planning something like this for a while. And then we'll have to talk about Nova Scotia too. Anyways, if you look at the data online, StatsCan, a bunch of other reports, and 2% of crime in Canada are committed with a firearm. Just as interesting is 6% of crime is committed with a bladed weapon, so a machete, knife, sword. There's a few others. I'm just going to refer them to knives. So you could sensationalize this and say it is 3 times more likely that you're going to have a crime committed against you with a knife versus a firearm. That's just numbers massaging. So let's keep it at 6% and 2%. What's more telling is that the number of deaths from knives is almost identical to that of firearms. So there's a 50-50 chance if you're going to get killed in a violent way of the 8% of crime in Canada, it could be with a knife or with a gun. And what's interesting is you go back, there's some years where they kind of flip-flop. It's not always consistent. But across the years, yeah, it's pretty consistent that it's 50-50. So we've got some more data on that. Now, if you got to dig further into this to get to the real truth of it. Now, if you go to the frontline reports, this is like BC, Alberta, Ontario, and Quebec, the reports are that the majority, and I'm not talking political majority, that people say 50.1%, I'm talking engineer majority, so the vast majority, as in most, as in high percentages, of the firearms that are used in crimes in Canada are illegally obtained, and the majority of them actually come from the United States of America, but most people probably are aware of that. Okay, now you dig further into this again, and the greater majority of the crimes are actually performed with handguns. It's not a 50-50 thing. You don't go on it. Most of them are with handguns, which makes sense because when you get some of these stuff out of the States, you end up with like small pocket 380s. Things are easy to conceal. Stuff that has like Teflon coated handles, so you can't leave fingerprints. Gee, do you think that was made for crime? Anyways, I digress. The point is most of the firearms that are used for crime are already illegal. Now, if you look at the list of firearms that's been published with this legislation, I've had a quick scan of it. I haven't gone through the extensive list, but there's definitely patterns to it. Everybody calls the AR-15. It's just a style of weapon, and there's a lot of that style of weapon on it. There's also a large amount of handguns. You starting to put this together yet? So basically, Justin, I'll just pick on Justin, but the Liberal Party has come up with this piece of paper saying, I'm going to make all these firearms illegal. But wait a minute, the firearms that are mostly used in crime are already illegal. You map it across, okay, they match, But if it's illegal firearms users, it's what? The point is, the legislation they put out is not effective. They're trying to re-illegal guns that are already illegal, just based on the type of firearm. So that is completely ineffective legislation. Now, there's a lot of reports already debunking this, so I'm coming a little late to the party. So anybody that says this is effective leadership, guess what? You're a dumbass, because they're not. They were proposing this legislation a while ago. That's why I knew about all this data from like last fall, and I just happened to have the updates for 2019. Now, what they have done is they've used an incident in Nova Scotia to their advantage to push this legislation, which is complete and utter bullshit. This is not a dictatorship. That's what people should be more worried about. Now, I can look at Nova Scotia, which is a terrible tragedy, but that man there had great intent to use whatever tools he wanted to kill people. He burned 9 people. Burned them. Has nothing to do with firearms. Has to do with somebody who is mentally ill, who was going to kill a bunch of people. So anybody that gets on there and says, I don't want some crazy person with access to guns, don't let your fears get in the way of common sense. Right? The odds of a crazy person getting their hands on legally registered weapons isn't going to happen. Right now, without that bill, they're still going to get a hold of illegal weapons to kill you. And by the way, I didn't put it here. I was going to say, I should hold up a knife and say, do you think we're going to go throughout Canada and ban bladed weapons? Really? Do you think that's smart? Do you think that's effective legislation? No, it is not. So people are jumping on the bandwagon here based on their own fear. I'll give you some background. I grew up in the North. My grandfather was a gunsmith. I've been around guns all my whole life. Now, a lot of the guns that are on the list is not something I would use. I tend to grew up using shotguns and rifles for the hunting I did. But I don't have any fear of weapons. Weapons don't kill people. Dipshits with weapons kill people. If somebody is that deep into depression or anger or something else like that, they're going to find a way to do harm with you. And guess what? The 50-50 chance is they're going to hit you with a knife as much as they're going to get with a gun. I digress. So where are my rants going on? This is my personal takeaway. Justin Trudeau, it's pretty blatant, it's obvious. Justin Trudeau really wants a seat on the UN Security Council. That's what he's doing it with reckless abandon. What's his motivation? To make himself look good, to legitimize himself. He really is just a trust fund baby. I know his background. Anyways, he could be thumbing his nose at Harper because I believe Harper wanted on it too. Anyway, he's going after that. So this legislation is something you go, hey, look, UN, I've done a piece of paper. I'm good. I want on that UN. Anyways, it's total bullshit. So again, it's not effective legislation. It's just a piece of paper for them to push through their agenda, I believe, to make himself look good. Now, I've always thought that the gun registry was a complete farce and a complete waste of funds. So my feeling is this: the money that's been wasted on this legislation, the money that's been funneled into the gun registry program, I've heard different numbers. Let's just say it's a lot of money. That needs to be taken and put into at least 2 other places. The first one is the frontline people. The frontline people know what's going on. They know how the guns are coming across the border. I'm not stupid. I have a good idea where they're coming from too. Mom and Dad live on the border. I'd seen contraband guns as a kid way up in Fort St. John. I know what happens. The point is, law enforcement, who's been trying to tell Justin Trudeau how to do this, and he doesn't listen because he thinks he's a dictator, pay attention to that, they know they need the funds, the resources, the power and allocation to stop these guns coming in from Canada, because those are the ones that are going to be likely used in assaults and in crime. Okay? It's not some person next door that has got some legal AR-15. They're not the problem. People need to get that through their head. Now, that's why I'm doing these videos, so people understand what's going on. Now, the other side of it is I think a lot of money should be spent into mental health. It's definitely an issue around Canada. So the guy in Nova Scotia, could we have changed his mind? I don't know. It's hard to look back. But I think the money that's being funneled into the registration program, that should go to other places. So people who are depressed, who are angry, who have these problems, the ones that might be prone to violence. And I'm not talking the petty criminals with the drive-bys and stuff like that. I'm talking like the person in Nova Scotia who comes out of nowhere, it seems, and does a huge amount of devastation. So Put the funding where it makes sense. Overall, this legislation is a complete farce. It's total bullshit. And people that buy into it are usually using their own fears and biases to justify it. Okay? Once again, you look at the math, you look at the data, you get to the truth of the matter. No, it's a worthless piece of paper. It's doing nothing. It might just make a whole bunch of people who aren't criminals into criminals with a pen stroke, which is wrong. And the other wrong is this thing was tried to be pushed through unilaterally. So now going through the processes that should be voted down, thrown out. And again, my idea, take the money, put it at the front lines, put it in the mental health. I think it's more effective that way. All right, I'll load this up and we'll talk to you later. Have a good one. Bye.